Mind and Mythos, Story as Weapon with Racon Gunner. That's me. I'm going to be telling you how to use professional storytelling techniques using television and Hollywood in your TTRPG games. So if you're running D&D or if you're running Psychscape or any game that you're running, how to use some of these professional techniques, some of the things that we use in storytelling to enhance your game and make them as memorable as possible. These are universal kind of storytelling techniques that have been tried and true throughout the last, 60, 70 years or more. And today we're going to focus on Alfred Hitchcock. And so we're going to open up with that. Mind and Mythos, the Hitchcock Rule. Put horror where it doesn't belong. Turn safety into shock. All right, here's the scene. Corporate meeting. 3 guys in an elevator. There's kind of the seasoned veterans and the new guy, and they're talking about the new guy, and he's kind of like trying to get a handle on who's who and what's what. They ride up in the elevator and they go into the boardroom, and it's a big boardroom. The president of the company is there. All the executives over there are there. And one of the vice presidents is launching a new product. And so as he's giving his speech, the doors open and walks in this giant robot, Ed 209. If you haven't guessed it yet, I'm talking about RoboCop, the original RoboCop from 1987. And in RoboCop, how it opens up, just like I said, Ed 209 walks out and he's the state-of-the-art military tech. He's going to be making them tons of money. And he's an autonomous, basically, cop, which is the idea behind it. And so there has to be a demonstration. In every good presentation, there's some kind of demonstration, something to show it off. So you get the scientists in the background. And of course, the VP calls on the young new guy that they've been talking to in the elevator. And he does something crazy. He hands him a loaded, like 44 Magnum or something crazy like that, right? And he says, point the gun. And he points it at the VP. He goes, no, point the gun at Ed 209. And so he points the gun at Ed 209. And Ed all of a sudden animates. You have 10 seconds to comply, right? And he's got these giant machine guns and he's going to kill him. And everybody's like, whoa, this is crazy. And the VP tells the young guy, he says, you better do as he says. And so the young guy throws the gun onto the ground thinking, oh, okay, that's easy enough. Ed doesn't listen. Ed goes, you have like 9 seconds to comply. And his gun starts spinning up. And they're like, what? What's happening? He didn't hit. What's going on? And the next thing you know, Ed unloads onto this guy. And he shoots him up. It's just crazy. And if you've seen the director's cut version, that was originally going to get an X rating when they were going to release it. So they had to like cut that scene down for the theatrical release. And the director's cut version is it's a little over the top. It's a little bit more than obscene. It becomes absurd. And Ed just never stops firing until he's out of bullets. And then, he shuts down and the whole thing is like, oh, we didn't hear it. It's a glitch, right? And thus RoboCop is born, right? And so anyways, that's the idea is you have this kind of like secure place, this place of like normalcy. And the place of normalcy is where the horror happens. And that's the whole core of this rule, right? And we're going to kind of explore that a little bit more as we go through here. Horror hits the hardest where life feels safe, right? Not just where it gets, not just the scary cemetery, right? Or the deep, dark dungeon. Horror is where normal life is happening and everything is okay. And then something bad happens in this, normal place. So Alfred Hitchcock used to have this saying, and he would talk about the things that scared him the most. And he said the thing that scared him the most was a clear sky, not a single cloud, right? No shadows and an open field. That was the scariest place to him. And for a long time, I contemplated, like, what the heck did he mean by that? What was what was his whole like tweak on that? And then I realized, well, there's no place to hide. When there's no shadows, there's no clear day and an empty field and all of that, there's nowhere for him to hide. And so if there's no place for him to hide, then that's when you can get attacked. And that actually, that scene plays out, that kind of nightmare of his plays out in his film North by Northwest. We'll talk about that a little bit. But you have to have those places of security, those places of normalcy, those places that represent kind of the foundation of a society, or represent, like the halls of justice. Well, the halls of justice is where all the bad stuff should happen. And that's kind of the idea. So some examples that you can kind of take a look at. These are some of actually my favorite films, especially from Hitchcock. And then I threw in good old Jaws because it's a great example for this. But Shadow of a Doubt's 1930 something film. And this one is great because it's Uncle Charlie is this, fabled uncle, and he comes out to his sister's house, and his niece is named after him, and he's kind of like gone out and done some things, and everybody, kind of has an idea, but really he's a serial killer. He's the merry widow murderer. And so he courts these, widows, these rich widows, and then he offs them, and they're looking for him, and they're not sure who he is, and they're not 100%, but the hero of the story figures it out, right? And the place of safety in this particular film is this small town, Santa Rosa. And Santa Rosa is like the picturesque town. There's the traffic cop, and everybody knows one another, and everybody's kind of in everyone's business. Nobody locks their doors, and this terrible, terrible serial killer shows up, and it wants to murder people, and they're hunting him down, and there's all kinds of crazy stuff. So that's kind of the setting of safety. In North by Northwest, it takes place in all these public spaces. So Cary Grant's character, he's confused with another guy. It's George Kaplan. They keep thinking he's George Kaplan, and George Kaplan doesn't exist. George Kaplan is made up, and so the story starts out where he's having drinks with some colleagues or a business meeting or whatever it is, and he has to send a telegram because something about his mom. There's no phone in his at her new house, and so she can't call him or something like that. So he has to send a telegram. So he sends this telegram, and at the same time he's looking for the telegram boy to send the telegram. The spies are looking for this George Kaplan, and the telegram boy is saying, Kaplan, hey, George Kaplan, we got a message for you. And he just happens to raise his hand at the same time. So the next thing you know, they got a gun in his side, and they've abducted him, right? And so all of these things in this story happen in these crazy, like, public spaces. So he gets abducted, and he goes to this place, and it's a dinner party, and there's all this fancy mansion, and they're having a dinner party, and they're going to kill him. And they can't kill him the old fashioned way, right? Hitchcock had a thing of like how difficult it was to kill people. And so they decide to get him drunk. And so they drop a couple bottles of bourbon into him. They force him to drink it, and then they stick him in a car and trying to run him off the cliff because they're in I don't know where they got to be. They're somewhere on the coast, and he can go off the cliff somewhere, right? And so it's this whole crazy thing. And then he goes to the train station, and then he's on a train, and then it ends up he's on the face of Mount Rushmore, that represents everything great about the country, and all of these great things, and he's being chased, and they're going to be murdered, on the face of Mount Rushmore. That whole idea is where you inject this terror into these normal places. And in the famous scene in that movie where he gets dropped by a bus out into this empty field, and there's nothing there, and there's some really sad corn stalks across the street. That's about it. And all of a sudden this crop dusting plane comes along, and it's not just dusting crops. There's a guy with a machine gun trying to kill him. Again, it's a clear sky, no clouds, there's no place to hide, and that's the nightmare, right? Vertigo is a whole different kind of like feel too. Takes place in San Francisco, and it's kind of like this weird horror movie where there's this weird myth that's kind of like created. And again, this whole weird myth is created to help cover up a murder. And Jimmy Stewart's character, Scotty kind of gets caught up in this love thing. He falls in love with this woman, and that's the whole point. And he falls in love with this woman, and she's pretending to be this guy's wife. And then they kill the wife and throw her off the top of this like mission. And this mission is like a Spanish mission. It's a church, right? And they go up into the church tower. But he has vertigo. He's afraid of heights, so he can't follow her up to the top of the church tower. And she's going to kill herself, and she jumps off, but really she doesn't jump off. They throw the dead body of the wife. The guy breaks her neck, and they throw the dead body of the wife off, and this girl who's covering up kind of goes off into mystery. And so all of this crazy stuff happens in these incredibly, again, normal places around San Francisco. And then who can forget Jaws? Jaws happens during the 4th of July. So not only is it the summer at the beach, but it's also set on the 4th of July. And so the 4th of July is representing all of these things. And then all of a sudden the shark comes along. I think you're getting my drift, right? And if you haven't seen any of these 4 movies, do yourself a favor and watch all 4 of these films. So now bring that to the table, right? So you want to bring that to your games. You want to play for D&D or whatever it is, Psychscape, whatever you're playing. So don't only stage the danger in the obvious places, right? Obviously, the dungeon is dangerous. The pits of the castle, going into Ravenloft, it's a dangerous thing, right? But it needs to happen in those familiar places your players trust. Sanctuaries where your players think they're safe. That was one of the things that really kind of got me about the Baldur's Gate 3 game. Playing through that is whenever you took your long rest, right? You always went back to camp, and that camp was set in wherever you happen to be. So if you're down in the Mushroom Land in the Underdark or wherever you are, right? The settings played. And yeah, there was some stories that happened in there, with some of the NPCs, and some of that role play stuff would happen in there. But in general, you were pretty much safe in there. Like, you weren't going to get murdered in your sleep. I think there's one scenario in there where somebody gets murdered. I believe I had Shadow, what's her name? Shadowheart and the Githyanki fight each other, and Shadowheart killed the Githyanki. And that was pretty cool. My character wasn't in any danger, but it did happen. But in those trusted places where they think they're safe, so if they have a favorite inn or if they've built some kind of fortress, I believe in 2024 you can have some kind of like a base now. Your character can get a base, and then and things can happen in that base when you're not playing your regular game, and so you can kind of role play. That's where I would have bad stuff happen. Definitely set up something there, so that they think they're not at 100% safe. So again, here's a list. The town square during a festival is a great place. The temple during a sermon is a great place. The warm inn on a snowy night is a great place. I believe that's kind of how the Dragonlance series starts. I don't know if it's a snowy night because it's autumn. I think it's Dragons of Autumn Twilight or something like that, whatever it is. And the heroes have all met after like a 5-year journey, and they're all going back to their favorite inn. And when they all get back to their favorite inn to meet, they're kind of talking about being a little upset because so-and-so didn't show up. And then all these like lizard guys show up, these dragon guys, and they have to get out of there. And they're taking these native people, Gold Moon and her husband. They got to escort them out of there because they're being chased. So it's their favorite place. They know all the people there. They know they know the innkeep and the bartender, right? They know everybody, and that place is violated, and they have to run from their sanctuary. And I believe the town is called Sanctuary. Actually, I think that's how it starts. you know, so the goblins do a raid on the king's banquet, right? There's a pet possessed child at a christening. That's kind of creepy. And a flesh construct merchant. So, the merchant isn't who he seems to be. Um, a golem, a mimic, something like that could be very interesting. So build that contrast and then break it, right? And so one of the things that you can do, and this isn't necessarily a direct Hitchcock thing, but you want to celebrate the ordinary. And so celebration of the ordinary is kind of like linger on some of the beauty and the smells and the light and kind of the order of things in your world. Like celebrate those things. Make those normal moments matter. Maybe they go to this place and they have a good time and they meet some friends and they have a good conversation and everything seems like super mundane, like this picture here, right? It's just a couple having coffee, in the morning. Probably looks like they're having a bunch of coffees there. But anyways, they're having coffee in the morning, everything seems fine. And then when you come back to that space at another time, that's when Ed 209 shows up. That's when you unleash the bad thing. That's when the horror happens. That's when it really matters. And that's where you're going to get some drama from it. And then your players won't know what to expect. They might get paranoid. They might be on edge over time. And you don't have to use it every single time, but use it when you do use it, make it count. So they never forget it. And so figure out where your safest places are in your world, right? Is it the chapel? Is it the healer's hut? Is it the captain's quarters, right? And then violate that, corrupt it, make it unforgettable. And so if you take these safe spaces, so to speak, and you destroy these safe spaces, that's going to make something very memorable. And that's what Hitchcock was talking about. So again, when you're thinking about it, whatever the sanctuary place it is, make sure it has a name. They know the name. They've been there. They know the sights and the sounds and the rituals. They know all of those things. I had a place I called the Iron Pole Inn, and it was an inn where the ceiling was sagging, and there was this big iron pole in the middle of the ceiling that was like holding it up. And I got that idea from my brother's basement. He had these big iron poles like holding up the floor, right? And I'm like, okay, that's a cool idea. And every now and again, when there was a fight in the place, when they rolled a 1, they would hit this pole. And every time they hit the pole, it would kind of come loose a little bit. And so they had the chance of like collapsing the ceiling on themselves and their enemies, right? But it's just that one detail that everybody remembers, and the inn can be whatever. The rest of it doesn't even matter, but it's got that iron pole holding up the sagging ceiling, right? It's that one thing. Just it's got to be a couple things, right? 1 or 2 things like that. So take those details that the players already love, a favorite NPC, whatever it is, right? And then add some kind of subtle omen, some kind of odd thing to it, There's plenty of movies where it's a little cliched, so you got to watch out for that. But there's plenty of movies, where the cop goes to his regular, it's his regular stop, and the guy behind the counter is acting really weird, but they're buddies. Like he literally sees this guy every single day, and the guy's acting a little weird, and it's because there's somebody behind the counter holding the gun on them because they're being robbed, right? So something odd happens, right? And then that's where the violation happens, right? And then something terrible and tragic happens there that they never forget, and it kind of changes the character, changes the people. So that's kind of like your basic outline of how to do that. And then some different genres of how you can kind of play around with that. So in heroic fantasy like D&D, there's an oath breaking at a coronation, right? The trusted, king's left-hand guy is, maybe he's just jealous. Maybe he's possessed by some kind of spell, whatever the reason is. He's not going along with it. And this coronation that's supposed to be a great thing imagine the end of the Return of the King and Frodo just freaks out and goes after Aragorn, right? Like that'd be it's a whole nother story, but that would be pretty wild. The AI purge at the med bay, the Alien movies are good at that kind of a thing. They take those safe spaces, kind of make them terrible and horrible. Um, a nursery monitor goes two ways, right? And so all of a sudden the baby's talking to somebody, or something. I think we've seen that in a movie. And then a hit job during a charity gala. A great example of how this plays out from another film is The Godfather, the first Godfather film. And that's a great movie because it tries to break all those cliches of the gangster movies, and it did very well of doing that. And it portrayed the Godfather and his family as a family, and so it starts with a wedding. And so the whole first, like 30 minutes of that movie takes place during this wedding. And so that's a whole thing. Like it sets them up. Hey, here's a family and they're having a wedding and these are their friends that are there. And there's a bunch of weird stuff is kind of interjected. And we're learning a little bit about these people, but it's a wedding. It's super normal. And then later on in the story, when Michael Corleone is running the whole thing, he does a hit job during his nephew's christening, right? And so he's becoming the Godfather, and he's at the church, and there's this ceremony going on, and he's got his guys out there killing the heads of the five families all at the same time. And so that contrast of like he's renouncing Satan as he is, he's the conductor of murders, right? That kind of contrast kind of breaks those cliches, and it makes those moments interesting, and it shows the audience something the same thing in a new way. And that's what you're trying to achieve. So your normal world is the bait. So the normal places your players habitat is where you want to mess with it. You violate that sanctuary, right? Whatever it is, they have a favorite inn they go to, or they have a favorite NPC, or one of them has their own place, or whatever it is. That's where the bad stuff starts, right? And that's what makes it unforgettable. And that's Hitchcock's rule. Use it well.